There is a moment that happens in millions of homes every single day, and almost nobody stops to think about it. Your dog appears. In its mouth is a toy, or a sock, or something it should not have. It walks toward you with purpose. It stands in front of you, and then it stops. You reach out to take the thing it has so clearly brought you, and your dog turns its head away, or steps backward, or simply holds on, watching you, waiting for something you cannot quite identify. It brought you the toy. It will not give you the toy. Both of these things are true at the same time. We tend to laugh at this. We call it teasing. We say the dog is playing keep away, or being silly, or changing its mind. And then we move on with our day, and we never really ask the obvious question. If your dog did not want you to have it, why did it walk across the room to show you? This is one of the most common behaviors in the domestic dog, and one of the most consistently misread. Not because the signals are hidden, because they arrive in a moment we have already decided we understand. Watch a dog carry an object toward a person, and you are watching something that took thousands of years to become possible. Carrying things in the mouth is ancient. Wild canids transport food, they move prey, they carry their young. The mouth is a hand, a tool, a way of moving the world from one place to another. But carrying something to a human, stopping, and then looking at that human's face, that is something else entirely. That is not transport, that is an attempt to be understood. And it is worth noticing how strange it is that a dog would look at a face at all.
Somewhere in the long history between our species and theirs, that meaning inverted. Researchers comparing domestic dogs with wolves raised by humans have found something consistent. When a task becomes difficult, when something is out of reach, dogs turn and look at the human face far more readily. They alternate their gaze, from the problem to the person, back to the problem. That pattern has a name in the scientific literature. It is called showing behavior, and it is one of the closest things we have to a dog pointing. Now hold that in your mind and look again at your dog standing in front of you with a toy in its mouth. Look at the toy, look at your face, look back at the toy. That is not confusion, that is a sentence. The question is what the sentence says. Here is where almost every dog owner takes the same wrong turn, and it is a completely reasonable wrong turn. We assume the dog is giving us the object, because that is what it would mean if a person did it. A person walking toward you holding something out is offering it to you. The meaning is obvious. But the dog is not offering you an object. In most cases, the dog is using the object. The toy is not the message. The toy is the reason to start a conversation. Think about what a dog actually has available when it wants your attention. It cannot say your name. It cannot tap you on the shoulder and explain. It has a limited set of tools: approach, gaze, sound, contact, and objects. And of all of those, the object is the most reliable. Because when a dog walks up to you carrying something, you look. Every time. That is a very...
Every time you looked up, spoke, laughed, reached out, or stood up, you taught your dog that carrying something toward you produces a result. Not through any deliberate training, just through consistency. This is not manipulation. It is not calculation. It is the ordinary way behavior is shaped in every animal, including us. Your dog has learned how to reach you, and it has learned it from the only teacher available, you. So the object is a request, but a request for what? This is where the single answer breaks apart, and where most explanations of this behavior stop far too early. Sometimes the request is play, and when it is, the dog usually tells you clearly, if you know what a clear invitation looks like. Watch for the play bow, front legs lowered, chest close to the floor, hindquarters raised, and often still moving. It might last less than a second. It might repeat several times. That posture is doing something remarkable. It is a signal about signals. It tells the other participant that what follows is not what it appears to be, that the chasing and grabbing and mouthing that come next are play, not conflict. The rest of the body agrees. The movement becomes bouncy and exaggerated and deliberately inefficient. The mouth is open and loose. The tail sweeps wide. The dog approaches, then springs away, then comes back. That approach and retreat pattern is the part people misread most often. It is not indecision. In play,
The tail is moving, though the arc is narrower and higher and faster than usual.
The body stands square. The gaze is steady on your face, and it keeps returning there. This dog is not asking for a game, it is asking for you. Object presentation is very often about proximity. The dog wants to be near you, and it wants that closeness to go somewhere. The toy provides a socially legible reason to approach, something to hold, something to justify standing there. We know that dogs form genuine attachment bonds with the people who care for them. Under experimental conditions, dogs behave toward their primary caregiver in ways that share meaningful structure with how a young child behaves toward a parent. They explore more confidently when that person is present. They orient toward them under stress. That person functions as a secure base. So when your dog crosses a room carrying something and simply stands in front of you, one plausible reading is not a request for an activity at all. It may be a request for contact, delivered through the only medium available. And sometimes it is a request for something else entirely. The walk that usually happens now, the meal that is late, the door that is closed. Dogs build strong expectations around routine, and when a routine does not arrive, the object often does. There is a detail here that changes how many people think about this behavior, and it has nothing to do with meaning at all. It has to do with the object itself. We assume the dog chose the toy because it likes that toy, because of its shape or its color or its squeak. But we are describing our own sensory world, not the dog's. For a dog, an object is primarily a scent, and objects in a home are saturated with the smell of the people who live there.
Which is why the item is so often not a toy. It is a sock, a shoe, a piece of clothing left on a bedroom floor. Those items carry the strongest concentration of a specific person's odor in the entire house. We tend to find this funny or mildly annoying, but look at it from the perspective of an animal that navigates the world through scent. Your dog may not have picked up something random. It may have picked up you, and then carried you across the room to find you. So far, every reading has been warm, a game, a request, a form of closeness. But there is another version of this behavior, and it looks almost identical from a distance. Learning to tell them apart is the most useful thing this documentary can give you. Here is the scene again. Your dog comes to you with something in its mouth, but this time, watch what happens in the second after your hand moves. The dog goes still. Not dramatically, just briefly, a pause and a body that was moving a moment ago. The head lowers very slightly over the object. The weight shifts forward. The chewing, if there was chewing, either stops completely or speeds up. And the eyes change. The dog does not turn its head, but the eyes move toward your hand, and a crescent of white becomes visible at the edge. Many people know this as whale eye. Perhaps there is a sound, low, quiet, easy to miss. That dog is not teasing you. That dog is telling you, as politely as its species is capable of, that it does not want you to take this. And this is where a great deal of harm gets done, by well-meaning people who have been told the wrong thing. A growl is not aggression. A growl is a warning that makes aggression unnecessary. It is a signal that costs the dog something to produce, and that exists for one purpose, to prevent the situation from escalating. It is, in the most literal sense, a dog trying to avoid conflict rather than seeking it. When that warning is punished, when a dog is scolded or corrected or intimidated for growling, the warning often disappears. The conflict does not. The dog simply learns that the quiet signal was not safe to use. A dog that has stopped growling has not become safer, it has become harder to read. So the most valuable response to a growl is not correction, it is gratitude, and then space. And here we should be honest about something uncomfortable. This behavior is very often built by us without any intention at all. Consider what happens when a dog picks up something it should not have, and a person moves quickly toward it. The dog moves away. The person follows. Perhaps there is a chase. Perhaps the object is pulled from the dog's mouth. Repeat that a few dozen times across a life, and the dog learns something entirely rational. When a hand comes toward what I am holding, I lose it. After that, holding on is not defiance. It is a reasonable conclusion, drawn from consistent evidence. You can see the mirror image of this in dogs who release objects easily and immediately. Those dogs have usually learned the opposite lesson, that a hand approaching an object predicts something good, a trade, a better item, a moment of contact. Same behavior, same species, completely different history. There is also a version of this that has nothing to do with communication at all, and it deserves mention because it is frequently misread as affection. Some dogs carry objects when they are highly aroused or when they cannot settle. The carrying happens, but there is no social target. The dog moves from room to room. It picks something up, puts it down.
In that state, the object is not a message. It is closer to something the dog is doing with a body that does not know where to put its energy. And in some dogs, particularly those who find being alone difficult, a specific item may become a source of comfort in itself. None of these readings should be diagnosed from a single moment, but they are worth knowing, because a dog who cannot settle is telling you something, even when it is not telling you anything specific. By now, you may have noticed a pattern in everything we have covered. Not one of these interpretations comes from the object, and not one of them comes from a single signal. The tail does not tell you. Tail movement indicates arousal, not mood, and arousal is present in play, in excitement, in frustration, and in conflict alike. The height matters, the width of the arc matters, the stiffness matters. The ears do not tell you on their own. The mouth does not tell you on its own. The gaze does not tell you on its own. Meaning lives in the combination, and in what happened just before, and in what happens next. So the practical skill is not memorizing signals. It is learning to watch the whole animal, and to keep watching for a few seconds longer than feels necessary. The most informative moment is almost always the one immediately after you move. Try this the next time your dog brings you something. Do not reach. Sit still. Let your hands stay where they are. Watch what the dog does with the space you did not take. If the body stays loose and the dog bounces backward, that is an invitation. If the dog steps in and leans again,
If the dog turns its body away and shields the item, you have just been told, clearly and without conflict, that this one is not available. 4 different sentences, 1 familiar behavior, and the only thing that separates them is a few seconds of attention. There are limits to what any of this can tell us, and it would be dishonest to skip past them. We cannot know what a dog is thinking. We can describe what a dog does, measure what its body does, and compare that against what we have observed across many dogs in many situations. That is a great deal. It is not mind reading, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. Much of what we know comes from studies of pet dogs living in households not unlike yours, which is useful and also limiting. Individual dogs vary more than breeds do, and parts of this field are still genuinely unsettled, including the question of how deliberate any of this communication really is. There is also a boundary worth naming plainly. If your dog's signaling around objects is escalating, if freezing becomes stiffening, or growling becomes snapping, or the warnings are arriving faster and with less notice, that is not a situation to solve with confrontation, and it is not something a documentary can solve for you. That is the moment to involve a veterinary behaviorist, or a certified applied animal behaviorist. And if an older dog suddenly begins carrying differently, or holding on to things it used to release easily, it is worth a veterinary visit. Mouths hurt, teeth fail. Behavior changes for physical reasons long before anyone thinks to look. It is a normal part of being an animal that has to make decisions about resources, and it appears in dogs who are perfectly happy and deeply bonded to the people they live with. So let us go back to the doorway. Your dog appears with something in its mouth. It walks toward you, it stops, and it waits. You know now that it did not come to hand you an object. Objects were never the point. It came because carrying something to you is the most dependable way it has ever found to reach you, because it looked around the room and chose the thing that smelled most like the person it wanted, because somewhere in the long shared history of our two species, looking at a human face stopped being a threat and started being a question. And it is standing there, holding on, watching your hands, waiting to see whether you understood. Most of the time, we did not. We reached for the toy, or we laughed, or we looked back at the screen, and the dog waited a little longer and then went away, and then came back tomorrow and tried again. That is the part worth sitting with. Not that dogs communicate, we already knew that, but that they keep trying every day with the small vocabulary available to them in a house full of people who mostly are not watching. The signals were never hidden. They were just quieter than we were.